Midden we all. Good morning to you all. And a right old hodgepodge this morning, all sorts of different things. First of all, news from the Cornish class in London, Bagas Bran, about a new periodical they've produced called Bran Vraz, literally Big Crow or Raven. Now, the idea of the periodical is, according to Bran Vraz, busy din drehevel pons into Kerno Halundres, hehema rag omnesi and il di ben, to build a bridge between Cornwall and London, and that to bring the one nearer to the other. Dilofinin scrivo dwarfendiu, ha Kerno Halundres. We want to publish writing from both, from Cornwall and from London. The title Bran Vraz itself comes from the story of Bran the Blessed, Bendigeid Bran, he's called in Welsh, the son of Shakespeare's King Lear, a hero of Celtic legend who, at the end of his life, ordered his followers to cut his head off. Typical sort of Celtic story. And the head survived for several years as the companion of his men, until at last it was buried at White Hill in London, where it continued, and continues, according to the legend, to guard Britain against her foes for as long as the head remains undisturbed. Now, the site of White Hill is actually, of course, where the Tower of London now stands. And in fact, that's the origin of the ravens staying in the Tower of London. As long as they stay there, they are guarding the head of Bran the Blessed. So, Bran Vraz, a new periodical published by the Cornish language class in London. If you want to actually obtain a copy of it, then you should write to Joe Preece. That surname is spelt P-R-H-Y-S, and I assume it's pronounced Preece, at the Cornish class, the City Literary Institute, Stukely Street, London, WC2. I've given you that a bit quickly. I'll just remind you, it's Joe Preece, the Cornish class, the City Literary Institute, Stukely Street, London, WC2. And if you didn't get it, don't worry. Write to me, John King at Radio Cornwall, and I'll make sure you get the address if you need it. Now on to further news. Yesterday was actually the closing date for the Gorseth Kernel competitions, Castrivian's Gorseth Kernel. And although it was officially the closing date, I'm sure that any entry that was received within the next couple of days would be accepted. I say that with no authority at all, I just hope it's true. The classes, just to remind you, are the Cornish language classes, musical composition, essay, environmental study, Cornish dialect, Cornish folk song, song in the Cornish language, English verse, decorative metal craftwork, photography, art, watercolour painting, and so on and so forth. If you have got anything that you had hoped to enter for the Gorseth competitions, then you should do so, obviously, immediately. And if you're wanting further information about the Gorseth competitions, then get in touch with Ruth Moss, whose address is 51 High Street, Falmouth. Ruth Moss, 51 High Street, Falmouth. Another small item of news, and this is very advance notice really, that this year's Gorseth, it's the 60th anniversary Gorseth, will be held in the Mullion area. Well, it will be held more specifically at Polview on Saturday the 3rd of September. It's always the first Saturday in September, but if you want the precise date, it's the 3rd of September this year, and it will be held at Polview near Mullion. And now on to a new departure for Kroeder Kroghen, and that is our very own version of a soap opera. It's not exactly Dallas, it's not exactly Dynasty or Dysentery or whatever you want to call it. It's instead, well, the full title is Anethel and Telu Pascal, The Adventures of the Pascal Family, but it's easier maybe to think of it as simply George and Samantha. Today's episode is called In Yeches HaKlafter, in sickness and in health, and Samantha begins the day by appearing to be extremely ill. She complains about feeling pure dom, very hot, my pistic in Briansen, there's a pain in my throat, pure galas you colenki, I can hardly swallow. And poor George, of course, is worried because they're supposed to be going off to see his mother for the day. Eventually, Samantha suggests that she should stay in bed, miara gortos oma in quelli, hagavoro de waiti for the nebis gwell, and tomorrow perhaps I'll be a bit better. and George goes off on his own to see his mother. But Samantha's true reasons for staying in bed are revealed at the end of this episode of George and Samantha.
Oh, George, Therma's on glue is pure dumb. I'm a pistic in Brianson. Oh, pure galazu, Kalenki. Me brother was tonsillitis the mortar.
Flouse.
Well, me Arthur Honna, nebbis westfit, snag you.
Thank you.
It's you, me only glue is. Oh, George, me agrees if his gwalrag if he gorgeous in gwelly has you. Therma's on glue is more one.
Well, mors osla Mark Ravis Edna, rager than pilgrims orth mam alvaro na vithnio tors.
Oh, nara Edna, George, me is still lower. Me is in both cuzzle. Caida honan, ha me ra gorgeous ome in gwelly, hag of borrow del waitchef. A fit of nebbis gwell.
Well, mors osla here.
Yes, certain of. And Martesan Tealdry and PW Oma. Martesan a fit of yours on glue is nebbis gwell de wessa, hag of his nebbis a wheel.
Del our Caris. Well, thermal mors living Caris.
Okay.
Lemon, Camer Weath, Gra Gorda Zena, and may wait till with the nevis well would you custa.
Yeah, ha me in West. Ra di haraju this ma'am.
Mira, thou Willis.
Thou Willis. Brunton, have you Gillis, Lemon, Wimbledon. And my even Lendl ha Boris Becker o quarry had he written, a what was glow day, ha me Vinema Kelly Edna. Tro da ganza vam, George.
There you are. I bet that's the shortest soap opera you've ever heard. And in case you didn't quite get the point at the end, what Samantha was doing was very cunningly sending George off for the day so that she could watch Wimbledon on the telly all day in bed, pretending to be ill. And there'll be more from George and Samantha next week. Now a quick notice that the annual general meeting Conteles Kemen Blythenic Agan Tavas of Ith Sintjus then Nessa Misgotheron on the 2nd of July, the viewer Warja Hanterdeth, the Halen Chapel Methodist, Perrenvian, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the Methodist Chapel in Perrenwell. And lastly for today, a fairly small item of news which I have to confess has got me rather annoyed. I try to avoid on this programme expressing strong personal opinions. That's not my job, that's not why I'm here. But the news item is this. Camborne Town Council decided several months ago that it wanted to erect new town signs welcoming people to the town. And as a member of the town council, I was keen that those signs should be in Cornish as well as in English. The text was agreed, Camborne agus dinner, Camborne welcomes you, and the English text was obviously going to be larger than the Cornish text. Well, having waited several months for the County Highways Department to actually come up with the delivery of the goods, so to speak, and agreeing to erect the signs, the news came through last week that the county has agreed that the signs can be erected, but without the Cornish text. And the reason they gave was that the Department of Transport, no less, has said that the Cornish text would be confusing to motorists and therefore a hazard. This presumably means that the Department of Transport have no idea that in Newquay there is a sign saying Newquay agus Dinach, that in other Cornish towns there are signs welcoming visitors. And I have to say that I personally am very disappointed that that has happened, and I very much hope that the Department of Transport can be persuaded to change their mind, and that Camborne agus Dinach, Camborne welcomes you, will soon be appearing on the road signs approaching Camborne. Well, hen you all, rach heddiw, chons da, ha years da that we all, good luck and good health to you all. Ha du gennych we, God be with you, du gennych we.